Hi, this is Jeff Prince from the Kelley School of Business, and this video is designed to highlight key content and features from my new book, Predictive Analytics for a Business Strategy. So in terms of content, let me take you down to the table of contents and give you some highlights. So to open up, one of the things we do is say, let's provide perspective. We're talking about predictive analytics as pertains to business strategy. Where does that live in the broad space of predictive analytics as a whole, and in the even broader space of business analytics? So we leave with that perspective so students can have a sense of where are we in the general space of things, and a little bit on what differentiates what we're doing from other areas of analysis, other areas of prediction. And in particular, what really distinguishes what we're going to do here is that it's going to be prediction coming out of causal analysis, so thinking about causal effects of variables on outcomes and using that to make predictions. Another key feature is right after we give them the perspective, we build some reasoning skills. So reasoning is going to be the foundation for getting us from a data set to conclusions. So we lay out, what is deductive reasoning? What is inductive reasoning? What are empirically testable conclusions? How do we evaluate those conclusions and ultimately evaluate assumptions that we're making within a model that we're using? Then we go build in basic statistics to get us from sample to population, layering on the reasoning framework that we've built. And then another key feature is laying out the scientific method, establishing that as the benchmark for establishing causality, why it works, why it's so effective, and then using that as a groundwork for future analysis in the book. So it gives us a comparison point for everything we do afterwards. So when we go into other models, how does this relate to the scientific method? Why do we need something else? What's wrong with the data? So what's non-experimental about the data that we have at our disposal? We're going to use models to try and account for that and deal with those situations. And how does accounting for the non-experimental nature of the data get us closer to this benchmark of a scientific method of an experiment? Then we go in to regression analysis and open up by showing that it's really just a descriptive tool. When you don't do anything else, just go run a regression. You're really just describing the data. And let's think about different types of right-hand side variables, dichotomous, multiple level, many right-hand side variables, all within the context of just trying to describe the data as best we can using a regression model, and why regression is so natural for doing descriptive analysis. And then another, I think, key feature of the book is that within this regression framework, we give a clear explanation of the difference between regression for correlational analysis and regression for causal analysis. What's the distinction between the two, or how can we use regression for one versus the other? Laying that all out. And then building on that framework, we get into different methods for establishing causal inference. So we start with some basic ones using control variables, proxy variables, thinking about functional form issues, get into more advanced methods like instrumental variables, like panel data methods, and then we round out the book with prediction for dichotomous variables, so thinking about linear probability models versus probit and logit models, and then lastly, kind of taking a step back, thinking big picture. Here we have a data set. Broadly speaking, what can we get out of the data? Introducing the idea of identification, so they can have this kind of big picture idea of, after doing all the analysis that we've done, when I'm sitting down with a data set, what are potential limitations that those data might have that I might need to confront before I even get into all the models that we've talked about. So that's kind of big picture, what's the content of the book. Another way to kind of give some perspective on this, and one of the things that's motivated me and also has been highlighted by Angerson and Pischke just in 2017, is this fact that when people are talking about econometrics, they're often, in the context of textbooks and the like, there's still this focus on true model, technical concerns, things like that. But thinking about it in terms of research design, causality, often in the teaching context isn't front and center, even though that's really what is the focus of these types of analyses. And from a business perspective, this is often what managers, decision makers want to know. Give me predictions about what's going to happen if I X, right? Thinking about different strategies that I might employ. I want to use models that can give me a sense of, if I engage in this strategy, what should I expect to happen? That really speaks to econometric modeling, speaks to predictive analytics with a focus on causality. And so just to summarize some of the key content features of the book, leads with an analytics and data context. So the analysis that we're going to do, where does that live in the overall data analysis space? Builds a reasoning framework as a foundation, has a foundation in the scientific method, gives a distinction between correlation and causality within a regression framework, and then teaches different causal models built within this overall framework and context. As far as pedagogical tools that the book offers, there are several. Let me start with, when you open up a chapter, so here's chapter 3, we've got our learning objectives up front, and then before we get into the content, we lead out with a data challenge. And the idea of this is to say, okay, here's a real-world application where if you don't know the content of this book, of this chapter, this is going to be a hard thing for you to solve. So in chapter 3, what we're doing is thinking about, you've got information on a subset of your customers, how can I make general claims about my customer base using that information? And so this one comes with a small data set and then wraps up with a couple questions that by the end of the chapter, the students should be able to answer if they've learned the material. If they don't know the material, these are going to be tough questions to answer. And then when you get to the end of the chapter, if you go down here to the bottom, we revisit the data challenge. So here's a rising to the data challenge. We revisit the problems that were posed, and now that we have knowledge of the material in the chapter, we can walk through how would we solve these problems that were presented up front, because now we know how to handle them. Another key pedagogical feature I would emphasize is the communicating data boxes. These are motivated by the fact that more and more you keep hearing about managers, decision makers, and businesses wanting more communication skills out of their analysts. Can you explain to me what's going on with the data? Can you explain to me how the data led to these conclusions? So communicating data boxes are really just repeated opportunities throughout the book for us to take ideas in the main text and apply them within a specific business situation or related, and just kind of talk through, here's what the analysis is, how do you talk about the ideas that allow us to conduct the analysis, allow us to get to the conclusions that we might arrive at from the analysis. So it's really just giving them extra opportunities to be able to talk about the key ideas of the book in applied settings. Another key feature are the reasoning boxes. So there's various points, as I noted up front. Reasoning is an important foundation for everything we do in the book, and there's going to be lots of key ideas in the book that are ultimately going to be able to be summarized in a basic line of reasoning. And so here's an example where we talk about the distribution of experimental outcomes. So you say, thinking about the average outcome for a treated group, the average outcome for an untreated group, if we take that difference, if we make a certain set of assumptions, we can tell you something about the distribution of that difference. And so here's a nice reasoning box that summarizes all the key pieces for us to arrive at the distribution and the difference of average outcomes for treated and untreated groups. And there's many instances of that throughout the book for key pieces of information that we present in the book. Another thing to highlight is the applications. These are at the end of the book. So I pointed out the data challenges that begin each chapter. Those are going to be focused on material that is within each of those chapters specifically. The applications section of the book comes at the end and allows students to kind of put it all together. Now they've learned a bunch of material. Here are some real-world applications that are going to draw from many chapters at once. See if you can put all this information together and do a good analysis. And there's going to be three components. One is going to be critiques. So here's some conclusions, here's some analysis that was done. Critique the conclusions that are being presented. There's going to be another part that's write-ups. So here's some analysis, write up what it all means. And then projects. Here's a data set. Here's some stuff I want to know. Go do it and explain it to me. And so just to kind of walk through, you can kind of see what these look like. Got tennis analytics, got switching insurance, got grocery store price promotions. Go into the written stuff. We got insurance claims and deductibles, got wearable features and sales, ad duration and clicks. And then for the projects, these are now going to come with data sets that are available online, thinking about tablet prices and profits, auto ad budgets and revenues, again, with another data set, and then machine maintenance and quality for the product, again, with another data set provided. So that's a basic summary of everything in the book. Key content features, key pedagogical features. These are all going to be accompanied with Connect material that includes our end of chapter problems. So at the end of chapter problems, we've got a bunch of conceptual questions followed by quantitative questions. All of these are available online through Connect. So you can have auto-gradable versions of each question, so students can get immediate feedback as they're completing these questions. Also, there's LearnSmart accompanying the book. Students can then look through the material. It comes with probes, which allows them to see, okay, for each part of the book, am I following the basic ideas? Do I get the main points that are being made in different sections of the book? And then last but not least, there's a test bank. So I've been teaching this for quite a while. I've built up a lot of questions that I've asked students over the years, and those will be available to you through our test bank. So I thank you very much for your interest in the book, and I hope you will find it useful in the chance that you choose to adopt it for your teaching. Thanks very much.